5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Thank you, Chris.
We'll be starting soon as we get ready for our stream to go live. Thank you for coming. So it's okay to go? Thank you for coming to our presentation on mental health in the workplace. I'm Faye Mitchell, chair of the DNCR EEO Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We try each month to do a program about North Carolina's art, history, and culture. Sometimes we do things related to a specific topic with a North Carolina spin. So that's what's happening today. I think May was Mental Health Awareness Month, but that month we were doing something on Latino history and heritage. So we moved this back a little bit. I mean, given the fact that a guy is stealing an airplane from an airport and some of the other attacks, it seemed like a good time to help us all take a minute and relax and look at our mental health. We're lucky enough today to have with us Julie Ingram, who is a psychotherapist with 29 years of experience. She has worked in workplaces as diverse as the university, the corporate setting, and corporations, tobacco factory. So I'm sure she can help us. I'm not going to delay it long. I'm just going to thank you for joining us and thank Julie, and the next voice you hear will be hers.
Thank you. I really appreciate this turnout. Usually people don't come because they say, oh gosh, if I go to this presentation, people are going to think I'm mentally ill, they're going to see me coming in or whatever. So that's part of what we're going to talk about is the stigma, and I'm just glad you guys are here to hear this. It's very important information. First of all, I'm going to tell you about your state EAP. How many of you know about having this benefit as an employee of the state? Great. About a third of you to half of you. Okay. Yes, the Employee Assistance Program is a benefit through the state. A lot of organizations have them. The state pays for this benefit, and they've paid very well for this particular EAP. I've known the people at McLaughlin Young, my group, for 29, 28 years. Great competent group. They're in Charlotte, and so they have affiliates throughout the state, and I'm one of the ones in Raleigh, and I practice out of North Raleigh. So I will see the folks who want what the EAP provides in terms of face-to-face. So basically your EAP does free assessment, goal setting, and referral for folks that are with the state, work for the state, and have dependents at home that work, of the workers. Also, if you've got college students, they can also fall under the umbrella of EAP benefits, and they can see people either on their college campus or in the area that the EAP will have as an affiliate, or when they're home from break. I see a lot of college students of state employees who are here on break, and they want to be seen for a variety of problems, issues. We always say no problem is too small or too large for EAP. We see everybody with depression and anxiety. Those are the top two in the nation, as you can imagine, of problems. Then comes marital issues. We see a lot of couples. And then we have all kinds of other people come to us for PTSD and trauma issues. They come to us for workplace issues. I specialize in men's issues and job-related problems and couples in my private practice. So I see people for EAP and also see people for therapy, the longer term. And so, again, we see people for all kinds of issues. We see suicidal people. We see people with family of origin issues, Getting ready to go home for Thanksgiving. Oh my gosh, I feel like a 4-year-old when I go back home again. How do I handle that? They're treating me like the youngest child again, that sort of thing. So we work with family dynamics. Let's see, we're confidential with EAP in that we have to follow HIPAA, of course. And so your information with me or when you call into Charlotte, it's your 800 number, which will show up at the end of this presentation. Everything is completely covered by HIPAA. We cannot share anything. When you come in to see me, if you were to see me face-to-face in my office, and I work evenings and Saturdays, so I'm really convenient. I see people from Durham that come in, Wake Forest, Henderson. So I see a lot of people on Saturdays from further away. But you will sign a HIPAA statement saying you understand the confidentiality, and you will allow me to speak with McLaughlin Young in Charlotte, because I do have to report and check out that you have the benefit, and they will send me the eligibility information that you do work for the state. And they do like to get large demographics, because then they'll know with the state what kind of programs to present or what's going on. Like they may have so much percentage presented with marital issues, so much percentage brought in depression or anxiety. I worked at Duke for the last 10 years and Duke Health System, and they had, as you can imagine, a very high rate of anxiety. It's a very competitive environment. It is high expectations. And so there was a lot of anxiety that was at Duke and was reported on their EAP information sheet. And let's see, what else? Your number of sessions, you would need to call the 800 number and find out how many you get that are free. And then after you finish, let's say you have 3 sessions, and you come in and you and I decide, oh, 3 sessions isn't going to do it. Let's talk about a referral. This group is awesome, and they let me self-refer. So I just got on Blue Cross Blue Shield panel. Hallelujah, because that's going to be my bread and butter. I can now get off my savings account and start living. I'm on Cigna. I'm on United. I'm on Magellan. Getting on Aetna. I may even be on that now. I just got into it. And Beacon. So even if you've got family members who have a different health insurance than you, they come in under the EAP with your benefit, and then if they want to see me, if they've got one of those insurances, I can start seeing them as a therapist. So that's a great benefit. Some EAPs will not allow us to do that. So if you build a rapport with me, they might say you'd have to go refer to another therapist other than yourself. So this group is awesome with that. I'm trying to think of anything I've missed. 24 hours, 7 days a week, this number will be available to you, so you can call on weekends, you can call in a crisis. As you'll see, you can also call for consultation or any questions around how to handle things in the workplace. You don't necessarily need to be seen face-to-face. We also provide resources. One thing, if you call the 800 number, and let's say you're a battered wife, and you say, oh my gosh, I don't feel safe, I don't know what to do, they will probably help you through the process in a moment, but then they'll give you numbers for Interact in Raleigh, okay? Or if you come in to see me, I may be talking to you about it, and I may say you need to get educated by Interact. They have a control wheel, they have a circle of violence wheel. You need, let's educate you on that. So I might refer you to Interact too. Okay, and because I've been in EAP for 28 years, I know the resources around here like nobody's business. I've worked with folks in Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Greenville, you name it, Asheville. So I've got lots of resources for you guys. If you have any other questions, I think I've pretty much answered all of them. You can certainly ask them at the end, if that's okay, because we're going to have you be able to ask questions in the mic. If you've got a burning question while I'm going through this, please go ahead and raise your hand and ask it then. That's fine to interrupt, because I want to make sure you get your questions answered, because this is really all about you guys. You are the people who are going to guide me, because every group is different and every group has different needs. And the state's going to have different needs than if I went over there and presented to IBM. It's going to be kind of a different situation. So with that, let's talk about, first of all, what is mental health? Isn't that a good question? Because we throw that word around a lot. We don't, by the way, use the word crazy. That's one of the biggest questions I get when people come in is, am I crazy? And no, you're not. Usually what I'll say is if you feel crazy, you're around a crazy maker. Okay? You probably know that. If you start to feel crazy and like, why is this going off the rails? We started talking about the attic, and now we're talking about my mother-in-law and how badly she treats our kids. It's like, okay, it's been derailed, and you need to get it back to the topic. Or someone is very defensive, and they'll start denying reality. That's when you got to start thinking, I'm probably not crazy. It's probably a crazy-making situation with a dysfunctional person you're talking to. So that's just for you to know. Just put your mind at ease. You don't have to think about, am I crazy? Because you're not. People that are schizophrenic and folks that have delusions and psychoses are not crazy. They have an illness, just like diabetes, and they have medication they need to be on for that too. So again, no craziness here. Mental health, well, first of all, we're going to talk about why talk about mental health in the workplace. Mental health of self. We always talk about clean up your own backyard before you look in somebody else's. That's a recovery slogan that I love. And mental health of coworkers. Definition of mental health. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And I will give you some tools about how to determine if you're mentally healthy or to what degree you are, and tools you can use to increase that. Okay. It's also in a continuum. You know, it's like any kind of issue we have in life, there's usually a continuum of stuff, right? There's abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's physical, and there's just various differences. And it's not that one is worse than the other, but let's say mental health is on a continuum from really low functioning, and probably somebody who doesn't even know they're sick, all the way to really healthy people. I don't know anybody that's on a scale of 1 to 10 who's a 10 or 11. I mean, I'm guessing the Dalai Lama is. We haven't tested him, probably don't need to. But that's about the only person I know that could come close to it, right? Because we all have our issues at varying levels. Okay, mental health is influenced by biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry. Did you know that your brain has a lot of neuroplasticity to it? We think that our brain is really formed, it's not totally formed until about age 25. So if you've got some kids at home or 20 years old and they're thinking they're making the best judgment, you can very clearly say scientifically their brain is not finished developing yet. And the judgment is the last to develop, okay? So that's a fact. And what they found with a lot of research and with science now, they're finding out that we can change the neural pathways in our brain in various ways. Because when we start thinking as a child, particularly of trauma, we start making patterns in our brain that it kind of goes down this path of, let's say you learn to be passive. And so that's where your brain goes each time because you've kind of been conditioned to survive that way. Well, now maybe passivity doesn't work well in your workplace or with your marriage. So you can learn how to change the synapses in your brain to then start thinking in a different way. And that doesn't involve ECT, like you're probably all thinking, oh my God, I don't want to, do anything like that drastic or invasive. And it's not. There are a couple of ways we can change your brain. One is by cognitive behavioral therapy, which is just a fancy word of saying if we change the way you think, we change the way you feel. And we can then change the way you cope. Okay? So I was a pessimist growing up, kind of learned to be a pessimist, and I learned to be an optimist, which probably drives some people crazy because I am always the glass is half full. That's just who I am, and I learned it through cognitive behavioral therapy. There are also things called DBT skills. Have any of you ever heard of DBT skills? It's kind of like the new thing in psychotherapy. DBT skills are dialectical behavioral therapy, which means with people who are emotionally intelligent, which is a whole nother set of skills I encourage people to use, what that says is that you're able to hold in your hand two different realities at once. You're not black and white thinkers, right? Like let's say you're going down 540, God forbid, but you are. You're going down I-40, right? And there's traffic backed up. Okay, yes, it's stressful, it's hectic. Why are there so many people here? You're getting tense and stressed out. The other side is, yes, the economy's better here. We're having more resources here. We've got more ideas from other places. We're diverse. So we're holding two things in one hand, and being able to do that is really emotionally intelligent, and you can learn that through certain skills. Okay? Because we tend to want to categorize people in boxes to make ourselves feel good, but that's sort of discriminatory and limiting in how we think about people. Life experiences. If you've been through trauma, again, your brain can be channeled a little bit differently. Positive experiences. Divorce changes how people think about things, right? Anybody else think of things that could really change how you think and your emotional health, mental health? There'll be circumstances. People that grew up where a family had to file bankruptcy may have been a great family and it was just situations. Sometimes people have to file because of medical bills that they couldn't help. Well, they're really terrified of their money situation, and they really cling on to it in a way that's beyond rational and beyond retirement kinds of funds. And that goes back to fear of having to file bankruptcy and not have enough money for food on the table and that sort of thing. Family history of mental health problems or lack thereof, that's a big deal. We're finding out more and more that things are inherited. We've known for a long time that depression and anxiety are inherited, and that's what we would call endogenous problems, which means that doesn't matter what your circumstances are, you can still be depressed. You can still be anxious. You know, people that seem to have it all, millionaires, oh my gosh, why aren't they happy? Why are you depressed? Well, if they inherited a genetic predisposition, it really doesn't matter what their world looks like. They're already wired up for depression. Same with alcohol and any addictions. My brother got that gene, I did not. I can't stand the taste of alcohol, and he's a recovering alcoholic. I don't have the compulsion to do drugs, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this because he has been very successful, and I'm proud of him. He's got a lot of resilience, and he's a professor at UNCG now, and it's been amazing, his trip. But anyway, so those are some of the things that we need to keep in mind. Why talk about mental health? Well, I'll quickly go over this. 1 in 5 Americans experiences mental illness in any given year. And that will be on the continuum. Okay, that's not severely mentally ill, but it goes from, I guess, bouts of depression that are reported to insurance and to companies, all the way to people that, again, are psychotic or out of touch with reality, that sort of thing. And because most of the conditions are moderate, you're going to see them coming to work. I mean, people will say, well, they can't have a problem. People will say, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have an alcohol problem. I'm at work every day. I'm a vice president. I'm this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, you're high functioning. You're high functioning. And they may be acting right, as you call it, at work, but when they go home, it's going to be a little bit more the gates down, right, and more of who they are. So what you see at work might be more difficult for them or someone at home when they go home. Okay, so that's one reason we need all of you to be eyes and ears for your colleagues, supervisors, managers, all of you kind of have your eye out. Now, the cost to employers is between $79 and $105 billion each year. Well, how does that affect you guys? You're probably going, okay, so it costs us a lot. What does that mean? Well, it means you're going to pay more for insurance. Your co-pays are going to go up. It means there's going to be reduced productivity, so you may have to do someone else's job or cover for them, which takes away from your productivity or which burns you out. You may have to work overtime because people haven't done their job. Absenteeism. There are just a few ways that your employer is impacted by mental health issues. Okay. There's a bias I have. I will say there's a prejudice, a bias I got, because I'm pretty transparent. There's really only one, and that is that if you know you have mental health issues and you're aware of it and you have the resources to kind of deal with it, I'm kind of like, as an adult, you need to really be doing that. There are people who are unaware and people in denial. That's different to me, okay? They're not even aware they've got a big problem. They need to be. Hopefully they would follow your lead in finding out if they've got a problem. But if you're totally aware that you've got some issues and you're not willing to see a therapist, that may be something to look at, because as adults we're tasked with making a living and paying taxes, and I put that right up in there, taking care of your body for your loved ones. You want to be around for them, okay? So that's my little tiny lecture on that. Value of coworkers. You spend a lot of time together. You see each other every day. You see each other more than people see their families if you're working full-time, right? So you see changes in people. And the biggest thing about mental health we want to emphasize is changes. Now, someone may come in with some problems, and you may see them get exacerbated. That's an issue, too, you need to keep an eye on. But if you see someone come in who's normally calm and they're really anxious all of a sudden, that may be kind of a red flag to think about, okay? Observers of change in others, opportunities to give and receive accurate information, that's going to be a big one because that's a tough one. To acknowledge we've got a problem, to tell somebody else they've got a problem, and there are ways to do that. I don't recommend you do that without any kind of consultation with EAP or your supervisor. We'll get to that in a minute. But those are big ones. Try not to be defensive, and it's tough to hear. I've heard stuff a lot, and you kind of swallow and go, okay. And you may say, I'm not like that, but then you have 2 or 3 people tell you, and maybe 4 boyfriends have told you, and you're like, okay, all right, I am. I'll go for help, right? So that kind of happens. Daily support, validation, and compassion. I call the curtain what is behind our lives. And so we may see people doing things that are irritating, annoying, painful for us, but there is stuff behind this curtain we don't know about. And it makes perfect sense of why they are the way they are. This does not condone behavior like bullies. They have a history, trust me. And somebody didn't stop them in their tracks growing up and acknowledge they were bullies to correct them, so they may become bullies as adults. That is not acceptable. However, there is stuff behind the curtain we don't know about. So that's the dialectical thinking, right? We don't have to put up with bullying, but we know there's some stuff going on there that they're not aware of. Bullies will never tell you they're bullies. They will never tell you. I don't get people coming in saying, I'm a bully, help me. No, they say, I'm being bullied, and the bully denies it, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. You can also be educators on mental health. Through the EAP or any information you have online, you can share that information. Do you guys know how much power an organization has, somebody's job, in changing people? Any sense of that? You're going to have no idea about this one. This blows my mind still, and I've known it forever. Basically, let's say an alcoholic comes home, and we're going to say him just for the sake of it. Okay, he comes home, and wife says, if you don't stop drinking and you don't get this in gear, we're leaving you. I'm taking the kids, and we're leaving you. Do you know the chance that he would get help and get a recovery? 25 to 30%. Willing to risk that. Let's say the MD says, hey, man, you got to quit drinking. Your liver is in bad shape. You're going to die from this. The chance that he or she's going to go to treatment, 40%. The chance that a manager or supervisor tells an employee, you need to, I don't know what's going on, don't know what's happening, don't need to know, but you've got some performance issues, you're making people uneasy in your work environment, you need to get this together, I'm not going to threaten termination, but I want you to keep your job, and this is serious, 85% chance they're going to go to recovery. So if you don't catch it here and don't report it to supervisors, or your supervisors don't deal with it, this person's not likely to get help. And the power of talking to someone about a coworker is immeasurable, because you could literally save a marriage. You could literally help them get parenting skills so their child isn't in as much pain when they get home with emotional abuse. So keep that in mind. You have a great deal of power here that you probably weren't aware of. Mental health for yourself. Time for yourself. That's one of the biggest things people come in with. I don't have time for myself. And in order to do that, we have to let stuff go sometimes. People want to have it the way they want it, and they want things done the way they want it around house or wherever, and yet they want time for themselves, and it's not going to work. If you can't fit it in now, something's got to give. There's a trade-off. So I think that's really important for mental health. Friendships. Loneliness in our society is rampant. I get a lot of folks telling me they're lonely. They can be in marriages. They can be single. They can be right across the street from their family of origin. It doesn't matter. It depends on the connections you have with people, and it has to do a lot with technology. So connections are limited, and there's a lot of lonely folks out here. Humor and fun, a big one. Humor is my number one go-to. And when I lose my sense of humor, people need to get kind of scared because I'm going sort of down and, too serious or too feeling like things aren't going to work out or whatever. So as long as I have humor and find some fun, I'm good. Sound sleep is probably the biggest issue. We've got a lot of people that aren't sleeping well. They're either not getting to sleep or they're waking up a lot. There's some people that are oversleeping, but not many. And there's a lot of people on sleep meds. So sometimes you have to take them, especially if you've got PTSD, but other times you can arrange your lifestyle so that you will be more tired physically. Nutrition, exercise, I don't really need to talk about. Those are obvious. And be open-minded regarding resources. One of my very favorite kind of clients are those who come in and say, I don't believe in counseling. This is just mojo. I don't believe it. My wife is sending me in, and she says she's going to leave me if I don't, so I'm here, but good luck, because this is probably the only time I come in. Well, my whole thing is maybe it isn't for you. I don't know. I would love for everybody to have it, but some people just aren't in a place where they can get it. I am really good at building that connection and helping them see that therapy is not threatening. It's very down to earth. You have a lot of control with what you want to talk about and do. It's a relationship you build. And so it's very non-threatening. And so that's one of the things I want to help people with is understanding what therapy is. Okay, signs of declining mental health. You get feedback. Again, people are telling you, hey, you're not looking good, you're looking sick, you're looking pale, are you getting enough sleep? You need to pay attention to that. Problems, again, with interruptions with sleep, abrupt changes in weight, and or lack of healthy eating. Increased irritability, sadness, anxiety or anger, and fatigue is a big one. Okay. We had some experience when I was at one of my organizations I worked with, and there was a guy, lots of times people are reported because people are scared of them. Like, yeah, they've got an anger problem. You're going to go up to them and say, are you okay? Or tell the supervisor, because what if he goes off on you or whatever? Well, we had a guy in one of the departments where I was doing an EAP with, and he was walking up and down, pacing throughout his department. And I think he was holding a can of Coke or Pepsi. I don't know which brand it was, but he was drinking that. And then they found out he went out in his car and was sleeping. Now, guy, he shouldn't have parked right in front of his office, okay? Because the window's here, his van is there, and he's asleep. But anyway, he was someone they were scared of, and they didn't know what he was going to do. So the supervisor had to call the EAP and find out how to talk to this person about seeking us as for counseling. Now, of course, the person can say no, and it can be strongly encouraged. And supervisors can learn how to do that by going through their EAP as well to get consultation. Okay. And I'm trying to keep up with the time. I left my watch at home. Is there a clock in here? Okay, cool. Signs of a troubled coworker.
Make that 15.
Oh, abrupt changes in physical appearance, erratic and unpredictable behavior. We talked about that. Isolation from coworkers, which is different than introversion. I have a lot of people apologize for being introverted. I'm like, who's going to listen to the extroverts? If there's not a problem with introversion, they're great. I love introverts. Disclose their personal problems a lot. This is a big one, verbalization of feeling trapped in a situation or hopeless about resolution of problems. That leads to a lot of depression and sometimes the suicidal thoughts. Threats of violence, they're not tolerated. I've had some people say off the cuff, oh, you know what, you keep this up and I'm going to go out in my truck and get my shotgun. Well, they don't really mean it, but when they come and see me for threat of violence assessment, I'm like, dude, that was a really poor judgment. Okay, you don't say stuff like that at TSA either, right? In the airport, you got to monitor yourself these days. And if you're going to talk about choking somebody, I wouldn't recommend that in the workplace. Talking about it, I don't recommend choking anybody in general. But anyway, okay, how to help a troubled employee. Genuinely ask how they're doing. Don't just say, how are you doing? Fine. Okay, if you see that they're really not doing well, really, how are you doing? And kind of hold the eye contact. And act as you care because you probably do. Strive to be non-judgmental. We talked about that curtain that's behind people's lives. Refrain from diagnosing them. They may look like your bipolar brother, but you don't say, hey, I know you're bipolar. My brother does just exactly what you do. Or you tell your supervisor, they're bipolar, and I think they're going to be psychotic like my cousin. No, you don't diagnose. Let the EAP kind of handle that. Voice concern about changes observed. Strongly consider taking your concerns to a supervisor. And this is a big one. Recognize your hesitations on your part to disclose concerns to your supervisor, because there's plenty, right? Fear of getting the coworker in trouble. They could feel that way. Coworker could be mad. Concern about how you'll be perceived by coworker and supervisor. Are you a snitch? You know. Self-doubt in your perceptions or magnitude of concern. That's a big one for women, because we have not been really taught how to trust our own internal voice. Lots of us have grown up with people saying we don't know what we're talking about, we're crazy, just make people happy, forget what they're doing to you. So it's important to get these perceptions that you air them with an EAP professional. And feelings of guilt or betrayal. The one thing to remember is you may tick somebody off, but wouldn't you rather tick them off and know that you're helping them in some way? And if they're going to stay ticked off, that's their issue. If they don't realize you're trying to care for them after you tell them that and the supervisor tells them that, that's beyond your control, but I think you would need to risk it, because otherwise you're risking safety of the other employees, of their mental health could continue to go down, and nobody's talking about it. Okay? And here's the 800 number for your EAP at the bottom. It's 888-298-3907. So I wanted to wrap this up because I wanted to make sure you guys had time, there was time for questions. Does anybody have any questions about the EAP or mental health or?
Bring the mic down.
I feel like I'm on Donahue, and if those of you don't know Donahue, oh my God, don't tell me, okay? Okay.
Remember, she said not to be shy, how it all helps to speak up and bring it forward, so let's do that.
And if it's about you, talk in the third person. I got a cousin, I got an aunt, my mama. Don't tell us it's you.
Can you tell us as co-workers the best way to handle situations if we have a co-worker who has to go out because of mental illness situation and then come back in? What is the best thing that we can do as a co-worker to support that individual?
You know what I hear time and time again for people who return to work, because I've dealt with them for 30 years too? They always say, treat me like I'm normal. Do not treat me differently. They don't like you asking why they're out. If they want to share it, they will. You can say things like, glad you're back, we're happy to have you, I missed you. But in terms of walking on eggshells, that will upset them. Afraid to ask, maybe you knew they went inpatient for psychiatric help, you heard it through the grapevine, or you know it for sure, I don't know how, but let's just say, you don't need to tiptoe around them, they're going to be fine. In fact, they're probably going to be more fine than anybody because they've been out for help, for medical or whatever reason. So that's a great question. If they're out for grieving reasons and they're really upset, the last thing you want to come and say is, I know how you're feeling. I lost my dog last month and I'm really close to the dog. And yes, it was traumatic for the person who lost their pet. Someone may have lost a child and you've lost a child. Don't say you know what they're feeling or thinking. You can say, I can't imagine and I don't know what to say. I say that to clients all the time. They tell me something traumatic and I'll say, I don't know how you're coping with this. I don't know what to say. That's the way I would behave. Being transparent is very powerful. It builds trust in people when you say, I don't know, I want to help, but I don't know how to help. Another thing you don't do, now that we're talking about grief, is to say, let me know how I can help you. Don't say that because they will never call you. What you can say is, can I drive your child to school in the morning? Because it would be easy for me to do that. Can I bring you dinner? And you probably want to do that after the flood of people who have brought them dinner have stopped 6 months after something. That's when they need you.
Next question.
You mentioned for adults who know they may have an issue and should be addressing it to be, their best self. They should do that. What do you recommend for folks who know they have an issue, but feel like they don't have the resources, like financially, I think that holds back a lot of folks from doing what they know they probably should do, or what would make them feel better.
And you know for sure they don't have the resources, they're just telling you that as an excuse.
Or maybe they don't know the options.
Okay, that's a good one. All you can do is educate them. Personally, I'm trying to get somebody I love dearly, and I've been with him 10 years. I cannot get him to go to the doctor. I've screamed, I've yelled, I've said, take care of your body. He's in denial. He's my age or older. And so nagging doesn't help. Crying doesn't help. Yelling doesn't help. I know all this. So what you would normally say is, I need you to look at this. You can do it online. There are support groups online. There's information online. It amazes me how many people do not Google anything. They start talking about something, and I'm like, have you Googled it? Well, no. Well, educate yourself, and then maybe you've got a platform to talk from and say you can't do this or won't do this. So there's all kinds of anonymous ways we can find out stuff. The EAP would help them with resources if they don't have any money or have no insurance. There are community resources. There are county resources. Some therapists will do a sliding scale. So maybe they charge $85 an hour, and for somebody they might go down to $40 for them if they don't have insurance. You can support them. If somebody's really influencing your life and you know they can get help and they're not doing it, all I can say, and that's worked for me, is to say, well, you know what, I'm going to have certain feelings about that. So you're going to have an unhappy wife. You're going to have an unhappy daughter. I'm not going to fake it like it's okay. If I'm upset with you because you're acting out, that's the way I'm going to be. And that's going to be a consequence. It's like Dr. Field says, you choose the behavior, you choose the consequences. And I've known that being quiet about something and not communicative, not to be mean, but to just say, if I open my mouth, I'm going to be angry, my partner seems to hear that the best. He starts getting scared because he doesn't know what I'm thinking. He doesn't know if I'm going to leave. And I just tell him bluntly, I'm not going to leave, but this is affecting me. And I can only be so cordial to you right now if you don't go get this looked at by a doctor. That's the only thing I know that works, and trust me, it's hard not to try to control that person. I love to control. I love control like most of us do. So we have to learn to back away and breathe.
What about if you are aware that you're disturbed by something, but you don't know how far it is to go that you need to do something about it? You know what I mean? Like, there's something that's been weighing on you, and you just don't quite know when to seek help, and no one has said that you need help. How do you know within yourself?
With your own problems. Great question. When people come to see me, they're at their wits' end. I don't see people who it's sort of like, oh, I've been dealing with this, and I thought I'd stop by, unless they've been to therapy before and they know what's coming if they don't come in. So most of the population will come in when it's sky high. I have women that come in doing 12, it's a stack of things, and a lot of times it's single mothers or African-American women, and there will be layer after layer after layer after layer, and I'm like, I don't know how you've done all this. This is way out of the norm. They don't know that it's out of the norm, and I'll say, yes, you need counseling. This is too much. You're going to get very sick. And so what you can do to guide you is, are you not as happy? Are you noticing you're on edge more? You're snapping at people. Do you start to feel like you're trapped? That's a big one. I'm trapped in this job. There's nowhere to transfer. I'm so specialized in this area. I can't find anything in North Carolina. That's when you start feeling anxious. You're not used to anxiety. You start having a panic attack. Your doctor says, hey, you may want to see somebody for depression. If your MD, your PCP, or GP is not talking to you about depression or anxiety or not screening you, I got to say they're behind the times, because all physicians should be talking about that. So that's another way you'll know, is they'll say, you look depressed. Men especially, they show it with anger. Anger's a great cover-up. So if you find yourself getting angry, what's underneath it for any of us, male or female, is you're either feeling fear, and how many of us can, especially males, can say I'm fearful? 0. So anger is acceptable. So it'll be fear, it'll be sadness, it will be frustration, are the big ones. And frustration is sometimes I can't fix it, and I'm used to fixing it, so I'm mad. So That's another thing. If you start to find you're more irritated, then you need to check in with somebody sooner than later. And if you have any doubt, call your EAP and they will help you. They will say, it sounds like you don't need counseling. Let's talk about it on the phone and get a plan. That's the other part of EAP, and the way I practice professionally is I'm strategic. If somebody wants to come in and talk and vent or find out if they're crazy, I will definitely be there to listen and to validate them, and that's what they need. If somebody comes in and says, I'm in trouble with my supervisor, I need how to negotiate this, this is a micromanager. By the way, micromanagers are very fearful. They're controlling because they're scared of losing control. It doesn't help you feel a lot better about them because it's impacting you, but just know that insecurity and fear is behind bullies and micromanagers and arrogant people. It's a cover-up. So you call your EAP, you find out if there's a strategy. I would help you with a strategy to maneuver. I might refer you to books. My website has a lot of resources on it, a lot of information about counseling. And I don't think McLaughlin Young would care if I gave you that to you. It's Julie K. Ingram, the letter K.com, and that will help you a lot too.
I know someone who wants to seek counseling, but he doesn't know how to like get that approval from his manager. Like, how would you say you need like weekly? How do you phrase that? Like, I've got to go to the doctor every week. I mean, I don't know. How would you phrase that to get that?
You're right. I don't know how it works with the state. I don't know how uniform management is and what the policies are. I do know when I was working at Duke and other places, it depended on your manager, which was kind of sad because one manager would say, oh, once you take care of yourself, I don't need to know what it is. Or the person feels comfortable saying, I need counseling, I've got problems at home, and your manager says, we'll figure it out. You take your lunch hour, let me know what you need. I'm all in favor of counseling. Other managers will say, you're going to have to go on your off hours. And that would be a tough one. But you can find somebody perhaps that does evenings. I do evenings. You can go into Psychology Today if you don't want to go through your EAP, and they will have a list of therapists where you can plug in words like you need evening, you need Saturdays, you need this kind of insurance, you want somebody who specializes in ADD in children. So you can screen it that way, but that's a good question. I'm wondering if that would be somewhere where you would talk to HR about. Probably even before you talk to your manager about it. I would think that would be appropriate.
As far as the state of North Carolina, we encourage you to make sure that you have good health, whether physical or mental. We also fall under the Family Medical Leave Act. If you're going to see a certified licensed therapist to gain assistance, then you can have your therapist to ask or to submit information, documentation for the Family Medical Leave Act, in which you can take time off if you need to. Intermittent leave is normally what we would use while you're on that, doing the therapy. The thing with that is that it can be handled through the HR office, and that we will have to have documentation from the doctor about the diagnoses and prognoses and treatment.
Thank you so much. The other thing I'm a big fan of, and this is with emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman has a book out about it, and it's just awesome. It's kind of knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it, what your goals are when you say it. And so one of the things I like to do when I'm pitching something to somebody, especially a manager, it will be about what he gets out of it or she gets out of it. I'm not going to just say, hey, I need to go and take some time for this. What I might say is, I know me, and if I don't get some help and get it through while I'm on my work time or some time that fits for me, I know I'm going to be crying at my desk. Okay, me, I could cry at my desk in the past. I'm going to be more belligerent. You've already mentioned my productivity is not doing well. I can tell you if I don't do something about it, you're going to have to then deal with a more problem employee. So I'm big into switching it to say, what would a manager want? What do they want to hear? How am I going to make it easier for him or her? And they will be much more likely to hear it.
Say you are seeking counseling currently, should there be some kind of end in sight to like your meetings with the therapist, or if not, is there some way to gauge for yourself signs where it's time to kind of like take a break?
That is a perfect question. I came from EAP, so I was limited. I knew that after 5 sessions, they had no more. So I was limited. Now in private practice, I'm learning what you're saying. Because I come from a goal-oriented background, I tend to talk to clients sort of like, we've reached this goal. What do you think about returning? And they may say, I don't know. And I'll say, well, you know what you talked about with this? I think this is going to get worse. So I think maybe we need to switch to talking about how you're going to cope in your marriage, but it's up to you. And then I'm getting somebody now who's getting better and better with what she's dealing with. And so I said to her the last time, I said, you know what? I'm thinking you won't need me anymore. And she said, I was thinking the same thing. And so she's going to take a break, and she will have a relationship with me. So she can come back 5 years from now, or she can come in what I call a checkup from the neck up. You've seen me before. You don't know. You're going to call me. You might come in back in for 1 or 2 sessions and go back. If you're feeling like you're not getting a lot out of it, lots of clients do not realize they're consumers of therapy, which means you hold them accountable just like you would your refrigerator salesman. Okay, if the refrigerator ain't working, you talk to the customer service or their manager. With a problem with therapy, people don't realize you speak up to them. You say, you know what, I don't think I'm getting enough out of this. Or you were talking about this last time, I think you're off track. And then if your therapist is defensive, like, oh, I know what's best, I've got a PhD. Hello, you need to switch. Because they need to be able to talk to you and say, well, let's think this through. And people that think we want to hang on to people for money is not real, because we don't make any money, to be honest. So if they're hanging on to you just to see you, there's another issue they have going on. So you need to bring it up and say, I'm not sure I need to come back anymore. The other good thing you can do is set goals. I will say to people, how do you know when you don't need to come back for grief because you can't measure it? Well, when I stop crying every day. Or they start taking antidepressants and they kick in. They don't need to see me, maybe because it was biochemical. But yes, you need to always have goals in counseling, and that's one reason I love managed care. I'll be the only therapist you'll probably ever meet who loves managed care, because they hold us accountable. When we file your insurance or we ask the EAP for more sessions, buddy, you better believe we have to have symptoms, we have to have goals, we have to have how we're going to get there, we have to tell them if you're getting better, and we've got to justify each session that we get for you. So we're bound by them, and I don't know how the therapists get away with slipping and sliding with that, but I think we need to be held accountable for the work we do.
That brings to mind a question. How do you know if the counselor is the right one for you? I think people may assume the counselor knows what's best and maybe something's wrong with them, but that might not be true.
Exactly. What you can do is you can think about the kind of counselor that would help you the most. Most people tell me they want somebody down to earth. They want somebody with a sense of humor. Hello, won't toot my own horn, but that's who I am. They want somebody who they feel like won't judge them. I have had people that were gay and lesbian go to people that say they're gay and lesbian friendly, but they will tell me they felt judged. And I do not question that, because people are right on when they feel a certain way and uncomfortable. So what you can do is you can ask your EAP for certain personalities. I want someone who's female. I want someone who's a Christian. I want someone with this personality. I had one lady tell me one time she was a recovering alcoholic, and she says, I need somebody to kick my butt. Well, then you need to walk out the door, because I'm not the person that's going to kick your butt. I'm going to be the one that brings up what you do well. How can we enhance it? Yes, you need to improve this, but I'm not going to stay on you about not drinking. People have free consults now. So if you're referred by your EAP, you get to have a free sit-down with a lot of therapists who will sit down. I sat down with people last week where for 30 minutes they talked to me. They got to know my style. I didn't pressure them. I said, think about it. I'd love to see you. I do work with these issues. Let me know if you want to come in. And then they go home with my information, and they may call me and say, let's make an appointment. But you definitely want to make sure there's a good fit. Do not stop at 1 or 2 counselors. Even if you've paid for the sessions, if you don't feel that connection, you need to move on and find someone who does.
You mentioned author seeking. We are spread out all across the state, and we have some very rural areas. What do people do when they're sort of in the middle of nowhere?
Excellent question, because what I've said is, you go out in Selma, and you see a therapist out there. I see Johnny's red pickup truck. He's not the stop and go, because there's not one there. He's in front of the therapist's office. Oh, I didn't know he had a problem. I bet his wife's been cheating on him again. Well, you can avoid that, because they have now what's called teleconferencing and telecounseling. And what that means is, and there's plenty of people that do it across the state, You could even have telecounseling with somebody who is in Virginia. You could have a therapist, and all you got to have is something at home where you can Skype. These people are licensed to do what they do. You are protected by HIPAA. They know how to do all this. I personally don't know how to do it. I've not been certified, but these will help people. I had one lady who could not come in because of her job. This goes back to the lady who said, what if your manager won't let you? Well, one of my best friends does it, and she does EAP work, and she is working with this woman at home. She goes home at work. She may see her at 8 o'clock at night by Skyping her. So thank you. That's an excellent question. If I was in a rural area, that's what I would do if I didn't want people to know my business, and sitting outside of a office where people knew that was the psychotherapy office.
I thought I saw a hand somewhere. I'll start drafting soon.
You guys are asking awesome questions. I really, honestly do not get this level of intelligent questions when I go places. They don't know what to ask.
You made mention before about environmental being a cause of mental health problems.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit more about it, and if you're speaking of work?
Thank you for reminding me of that.
And what are some of the more common issues you see in the workplace?
Well, I will self-disclose. Yes, your work environment can create symptoms you've never had, like anxiety or depression, based on the way you're managed, the way coworkers are around you. Trust me, 90% of the job problems I get are interpersonal problems because people aren't getting along. You've got somebody dysfunctional in the group. You've got a diva who thinks things should be different for her. You've got the bully. You've got a passive manager who lets the difficult people lead the group. Yeah, I was doing pretty good in my life. And then the last manager I had, first of all, the bar was high for performance, and I've always had expectations that were over expectations on my evals. I've always been the highest producer with the numbers of intakes and stuff. Well, I got into a situation where I'll just say I said something in a polite way to one of the favorites of his in a meeting. The person was getting on me about not recycling, and I just very kindly said, that's not a business issue. We don't need to be dealing with it here. And she kept on me, and I finally got a little harsh and said, okay, stop it. This is not what we need to be dealing with here. So my boss was there. He didn't interrupt her or anything. And so he kind of had it out for me after that. And so I started getting micromanaged, and there was a couple of bullies in the group. There were a couple of people, when they were upset, would not talk to you. I had two women, for whatever reason, just stopped talking to me for 2 years. One office was here, one office was here. And so it was being shunned, okay? And yeah, I have my issues. Mainly is I don't set good boundaries with people who are mean to me. So I'm a good target, right? So I've had to learn how to set boundaries and stand up for myself in the workplace. Well, it got so bad, my anxiety just hit the roof. I started getting sick. I was crying between clients. Nothing worse than coming in and see a counselor and you got little red eyes, but I was, they weren't in front of them, but, I was really upset. I was transposing numbers. My performance was going down because of it. My boss was only giving me critical feedback. He wasn't one to give positive. And I was very open. I said, look, I understand I'm making mistakes. I really need you to tell me some positive things along with the negative because I'm already hard on myself. You know I already am. Never, never, ever gave me a positive stroke. So it got so bad that I was getting up on Saturdays and freaking out because I thought I was late to work, and it was Saturday. I couldn't keep track of the days of the week. I would jump up. I swear to God, it was probably in the wintertime. I thought it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was 10 o'clock at night. Maybe it was in the summer. But I was that discombobulated. I couldn't think straight. And so what I got was PTSD. Because for a year after I left that job, I had nightmares every night about the same group of people, the same situation. It was about every 2 days the year after that, and now it's about once a week. And I've been diagnosed as having PTSD from the work environment. I was yelled at and screamed at by a coworker who was bullying. It mimicked my family of origin. So when that stuff happened, I just went into that place. And so, again, I was diagnosed with it. And you don't know what kind of background people have. And so you can hit somebody in ways you have no idea what you're pulling up in them. That's why we need to be kind to each other. Nobody would realize where I work that I have PTSD. It was a pressure cooker, and it was never the clients. It's never been my clients. The people coming to see me, I love them. They were kind and sweet, and it's the coworkers that have always gotten me very stressed out, and those are psychotherapists. So go figure.
Maybe one more question? Last chance. I see some whispering back here. I'm going to track somebody down.
And I will say, when I had all those problems, I did see a therapist, and I did have to get on medication. I did it, had to survive. So you don't like meds, but sometimes you got to take them. Plenty of your coworkers are on them just to come to work. You'd be surprised who's on antidepressants and anti-anxiety because it's work. And the thing will be, why do I have to change when they're the problem? Well, because you can't control them. It is unfair, but that's the way it is.
Well, I'd like to thank Julie for coming, and I think we should give her a round of applause.
Thank you. This has been a great group. Awesome.
I would like to say that we will be having our Thursday talk next month on September 20th, and we're going to have Jeff Gravely from WRL-TV talk about North Carolina culture, or the sports culture in North Carolina, because we sure are big on that. With that in mind, I thank you again. I look forward to seeing you next month.